I just wanted a quiet evening and a hot shower, but stepping into the house, a hollow echo met me instead. The air felt off the moment I twisted the key in the door. No familiar weight of coats on the rack. No scent of chili lingering from the night before. Just space-wide, cold, unfamiliar space where there should have been the clutter of living. My boots clicked against the hardwood like they didn't belong here. Like I didn't belong here. I called out instinctively, "Linda." No answer. The silence deepened as I stepped further inside. The walls looked stripped. No framed photos, no quirky art prints. Zach insisted we hang even though they clashed with everything. The living room was bare except for a single floor lamp left unplugged in the corner like a forgotten prop from a play that had already ended. Something cracked inside me as I walked deeper into what was supposed to be my home. The couch was gone. The bookshelf that once held my nursing textbooks and Mom's ceramic angels gone. Even the damn ficus plant that never liked me was missing. I opened the hall closet. Empty. Bedroom. Also empty. Even the sheets were gone. I paused in the doorway, my heart knocking against my ribs like it wanted out. My breath caught somewhere between my lungs and throat. This wasn't just cleaning. This wasn't redecorating. They were gone. I stepped into the kitchen like maybe they'd be sitting there sipping tea like nothing was wrong. The kettle was missing. Even the fridge magnets were gone. Only a white envelope sat propped up on the kitchen island. Just my name on the front. All caps. No heart, no flourish. Just Nora. I opened it with numb fingers. "Thanks for fixing our credit. We're moving to Texas with Zach. Don't call." 3 lines. No apology, no explanation, no address, no phone number. Not even a take care. Just that. I read it again slower like maybe I'd misread it. Maybe we didn't mean Linda and Thomas, my own parents. Maybe it was some sick inside joke. But the paper didn't change. The ink didn't fade. They were gone, and they'd taken everything. I leaned against the counter, the cool granite pressing into my spine. My body wasn't ready to absorb what my brain already knew. They'd cleaned me out. Not just the furniture or the heirlooms. They'd taken my trust and thrown it in a U-Haul headed for Texas. I closed my eyes and tried to think of the last conversation I had with Linda. Something about refinancing the house. Right. She had been vague. Said the paperwork was nothing important, that it just helped consolidate some debt. I'd signed because I thought I was helping. Because that's what family does. Because I'd always believed that we were the kind of family who fought for each other, not with each other. A lie. The sharp edge of betrayal cut through the fog in my head. I walked back into the living room. No, the shell of the living room, and tried to center myself. There was no sound, but the low hum of the refrigerator, the only appliance they'd left behind. I dropped onto the bare floor, the wood cold beneath me, and held the envelope in both hands like it could explain itself if I just stared hard enough. It didn't. Instead, my phone buzzed against my hip. A notification. "Congratulations on the successful listing of your property at 42117 Oakwood Lane. Closing in 30 days. My blood froze. I didn't list the house. I hadn't even thought about selling. The last conversation I'd had with the mortgage officer was about a payment deferral while I helped my mom through her hip surgery. I hadn't signed anything recent. Unless they had. Unless that refinancing paperwork wasn't what I thought it was. Unless I'd signed away more than I realized. My fingers shook as I opened the realtor email. There were photos of my house. My home. Taken just yesterday. Rooms perfectly staged with someone else's furniture, neutral colors, throw pillows, polished wood, the fake smell of welcome. I wasn't looking at my home anymore. I was looking at a listing. The kind strangers scroll through on their lunch break. The kind buyers visit once, smile politely, and say, "This could work." I clenched the phone. My house was being sold out from under me. They were gone, but their betrayal had just begun. The night my mother called at 2 a.m. pleading, I vowed I would save them even if it meant everything I had. Her voice cracked before I could even say hello. Nora, they're going to take the house. I sat upright in bed, heart hammering the cheap sheets tangling around my legs like a net. What do you mean? There was a mix-up, a missed payment. Maybe two. But it's not what you think. It's... She swallowed audibly. We need help. I could hear Thomas's voice in the background, sharp and defensive. Don't tell her everything. Please, Linda whispered. You're the only one who can fix this. I should have asked questions. I should have said no. Instead, I said, I'll take care of it. And I did. That was 7 months ago. 7 months of scrambling, sacrificing, bending backwards to keep the roof over all our heads. The next morning, I sat with 3 cups of bad coffee and a growing pile of bills spread across my kitchen table. Property taxes overdue, credit card balances maxed out, utility bills unpaid stacked like a game of financial Jenga waiting to collapse. I hadn't realized how bad it was until I saw it all in front of me, how much they'd ignored and delayed while pretending things were fine. I paid what I could that day. I dipped into my savings, canceled my renter's insurance, and called my credit union to request a temporary credit line increase. I worked a double shift that weekend, then another the next. Overtime became the new normal. My scrubs started smelling like old coffee and antiseptic. My phone buzzed every night with updates from Linda. Just made a partial payment. Mortgage still pending, but you bought us time. We're good for now. Thank you, sweetheart. I ignored the ache in my shoulders and the emptiness of my fridge. I told myself this was what family did. I reminded myself that if roles were reversed, they'd do the same for me. Then a few weeks later, Linda posted a photo online, her and Zach arms around each other, smiling in front of a new SUV, rewarding ourselves for surviving the storm. Hashtag Chush family. First, hashtag Chush fresh start. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. I hadn't eaten in 12 hours. I was down to instant noodles and boxed mac and cheese rationed by PayCycle. My work shoes had a hole the size of a thumbprint, and I still hadn't gotten around to replacing the cracked screen on my phone. And they were celebrating. I didn't say anything. I should have. But I kept working. I took on more patients. I sold my grandma's old ring to cover the heating bill. I skipped a routine medical checkup because the copay was too high. When Zach texted me a week later asking if I could help him cover a shortfall in his tuition, I sent him the money without hesitation. Then came the second phone call. We need you to sign something, Linda said. What is it? Just a document for refinancing. It's still your house too. We just need your signature so the paperwork reflects that. I didn't read it. I trusted her. I remember sitting at the kitchen table signing line after line while she smiled at me. You've really grown up, she said. You're the strong one now. It almost felt like a compliment. Thomas stood by the window, arms crossed. He didn't look at me once. Later that week, I overheard him on a call with someone, maybe a friend, maybe a lawyer. She'll never question it, he said. She wants to believe we're still a family. I should have questioned it then. But I didn't. I buried it. Instead, I focused on keeping them afloat. I ignored the things I was giving up. Nights out, vacations, a down payment on a place of my own. I told myself I was buying time, not losing it. Then one evening, exhausted and hungry after a double shift, I opened the mail and saw a flyer tucked into a realtor brochure. Interested in transferring home ownership? Ask us about quitclaim deeds. Something in me paused. The name sounded familiar, like something I'd seen, something I'd signed. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed scrolling through legal forums, housing blogs, anything that could explain what a quitclaim deed really was. I learned how it could transfer property without guaranteeing clear title. How it was often used in trust within families. Trust. That word burned. I dug through my file box and found the documents I'd signed. They weren't refinancing papers. They were quitclaim deeds. Two of them. My name was on the grantor line. Linda and Thomas were the grantees. I had given them the house. Legally. Entirely. And I hadn't even known it. I stared at my signature steady, confident blind. I felt sick. My stomach coiled inward. I couldn't believe how easily I had been led, how quickly love could become leverage. But I didn't cry. Not then. I closed the file and whispered into the empty room. This isn't over. Every room I walked through whispered memories now stolen like my past had been erased overnight. I moved from hallway to hallway like I was walking through the ghost of my own life. The floors creaked beneath my weight, different now, louder in the emptiness. My hands skimmed across walls where picture frames once hung fingertips searching for the textures of the past, for evidence that I had lived here, that love and laughter and chaos had once filled this space. But there was nothing. No high school graduation photo. No family vacation shot from the Oregon coast where Linda had sunburned her entire chest and still insisted on being in every photo. No Polaroid of Zach when he lost his first tooth. Just faint outlines on the paint, small nail holes like punctures in the timeline of my life. Even my childhood room was gutted. The lilac curtains were gone. So were the books I'd collected since I was 11. The ceramic lamp with the chip on its base, the one I'd begged Linda not to throw away, gone. My dresser drawers were pulled out empty and dusty like the room had been abandoned years ago, not just days. I opened the closet and stared into the hollow. Only one thing remained, a lone shoebox on the top shelf. When I reached for it, dust fell onto my sleeve like ash. Inside, I found scraps. Literal scraps. A torn corner of a birthday card. A school photo of me with braces and an awkward side part. My old library card expired and cracked. It felt like someone had picked through my life and discarded everything that mattered, saving only the pieces too small to be useful. I stood in the center of the room trying not to cry. But it wasn't just sadness pressing against my ribs now, it was rage. Pure, quiet rage. They didn't just leave me. They erased me. A sharp knock on the front door startled me. I wasn't expecting anyone, not anymore. I walked slowly to the door and opened it to find Mrs. Berman standing there wrapped in a knit cardigan despite the mild fall air. Her hair was tucked under a lavender scarf, and her expression was soft, but serious. "I saw the moving truck," she said without introduction. "Didn't look like you're doing." I blinked. It wasn't. She tilted her head slightly. "You okay, sweetheart? I didn't have the energy to lie. Not even close." She reached into her bag and pulled out a thin bundle wrapped in a plastic grocery sack. "I salvaged these from the trash bins 2 nights ago. I thought they looked important." I took the bag slowly and peeled it open. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Some bent, some smudged, but all familiar. One of me on a swing at age 6. Another of my dad holding Zach in the kitchen. A candid of Linda and me baking Christmas cookies, both of us in ridiculous aprons. They'd thrown these away. I swallowed hard. "Thank you," I whispered. Mrs. Berman nodded. "Thought you'd want to know I saw Zach talking to a man in a suit last week. Right outside. He was holding a clipboard. They looked official." That set something buzzing in the back of my mind. "Do you remember the company name?" She shook her head. "Didn't catch it. But I know a closing crew when I see one." I thanked her again and watched as she shuffled back toward her house, the soft shuffle of her steps oddly comforting. I stepped back inside and closed the door behind me. Holding the rescued photos in my hands felt like holding a small piece of justice, proof that I wasn't crazy, that what we had was real, that I wasn't just imagining the betrayal they had tried to bury the evidence of our shared life. And yet, some pieces had survived. My phone buzzed again. Another email from the realtor. I hesitated. I didn't want to read it, but I also couldn't ignore it. I opened the message. Nora, we've received conflicting records regarding the title transfer. Please contact our office ASAP to discuss discrepancies. Best Ainsley at North Sound Realty discrepancies. I stared at the screen, then read it again. Something about the phrasing made me sit down. Conflicting records. Not just your home is being sold, not just you signed away your rights, but something wasn't adding up, and they knew it. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was a typo. Maybe I was reading too much into it. But maybe, just maybe, they hadn't covered their tracks as well as they thought. And for the first time since I stepped into this empty house, a flicker of something unfamiliar sparked inside me. Not grief, not panic, resolve. One signature on a piece of paper could either save my home or bury it for good. I sat in the sterile reception area of Harper Quinn and Associates, gripping a folder so tightly the edges were beginning to curl under my fingers. The office smelled faintly of lemon-scented disinfectant and quiet power. Everything about the space, from the frosted glass partitions to the modern minimalist artwork on the walls, screamed, "One thing we handle: serious business." I wasn't sure if I belonged here. Ms. Mitchell, the receptionist, called, looking up from her monitor. I stood smoothing the front of my blazer borrowed from a coworker before walking toward the frosted door she gestured to. My heart thudded like a warning. Inside the office was bathed in filtered morning light. Harper Quinn! The woman herself stood from behind a polished walnut desk. She extended a hand, firm and steady. "Ms. Mitchell, I'm Harper. Come in." Her voice was smooth but authoritative, the kind of tone that made you sit straighter without realizing it. I handed her the folder without preamble. "I think my family used me to sign away my rights to the house, but now something's off." The realtor found a discrepancy. I did some digging. She nodded and motioned for me to sit. Her fingers flipped expertly through the pages. Deed copies, county records, notarized signatures. My entire financial life exposed and itemized in 12 printed pages. I watched her eyes scan, pause, scan again. Then she reached for her keyboard and pulled up the King County Property Database. "Have you reviewed this document carefully?" she asked, holding up the original quitclaim deed. I nodded. It was buried in what they told me was refinancing paperwork. But my name is listed as the grantee, not the grantor. Harper looked at me over the rim of her glasses. "That's the twist." I blinked. "What?" "You didn't sign away your rights." "They did. This deed," she tapped the page, "lists you as the sole legal owner. Your mother and stepfather transferred ownership to you 7 months ago. It's filed, it's valid, and it hasn't been reversed." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "But they're selling the house." I got the realtor email. "They listed it," she said carefully. "But they don't have the authority to sell it. You do. Without your signature, no sale can go through." I slumped back in the chair, the air leaving my lungs in one sharp exhale. I felt like I had been holding my breath since I walked into that empty house, and maybe I had. Harper continued. "They likely hoped you wouldn't notice. Maybe they expected to manipulate you again or file something forged at the last minute. But right now, you hold the deed. You have legal control." A silence settled between us, thick with realization. "So what do I do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "We issue a cease and desist to the listing agent, notify the title company, and file an affidavit of ownership with the county clerk," she said. "If they continue to act in bad faith, we escalate to civil litigation." "Litigation?" I repeated, still spinning from the reversal. "But I don't want to sue my own." She stopped me with a look. Not unkind, but firm. "Ms. Mitchell, let me be clear, they've already crossed the legal line. You're not being vindictive. You're protecting your rights." I nodded slowly. "Okay, let's do it." She gave a tight smile. "I'll have my assistant start the paperwork." For the first time since this all began, I felt like I was standing on something solid. I left the office with trembling hands and a mental checklist notify the county alert the realtor secure the documents. I didn't feel like a victim anymore. I felt like someone who had just stumbled into a loaded weapon and finally figured out how to use it. Outside, the morning sun was brighter than I remembered it being. Everything looked sharp like the world had been out of focus until now. Then my phone buzzed. A text. From Zach. "We'll see you in court. Let's see who they believe." So, they knew. And now the game had changed. They didn't just take my house, they were rewriting the story of my life. It started with a post. Linda, all smiles, standing in front of a tidy bungalow in some Texas suburb with caption perfect lighting. Her arm around Zach, both of them in matching New Beginnings hoodies like they were starring in a Hallmark film. Thomas wasn't in the picture, probably too busy hiding behind lawyers. The caption read, "Sometimes you have to let go of toxic energy to protect your family. After years of financial burden, we finally made the brave choice to move on. Some people just don't understand sacrifice." Fresh start. Family first. I sat at the makeshift desk I'd assembled in the corner of my now empty living room, lit only by the blue glow of my laptop screen. My phone buzzed every few seconds, texts, DMs, screenshots, friend requests from strangers who were clearly mining for gossip. I hadn't posted anything publicly. Not yet. But the internet was already drawing battle lines. I scrolled through the comments. "So proud of you, Linda. You're doing what's best. Toxic people never change. Praying for your peace. Cutting ties is strength, not weakness." Toxic. That was the word they chose for me. Rachel Kim messaged just as I slammed the laptop shut. "You okay? I saw Linda's post. Want me to comment something snarky? Or should I go full investigative mode?" I stared at her message and then typed, "Don't engage." "Not yet." She replied immediately. "So you have a plan?" I didn't. Not a full one. But I had something better than blind rage. I had evidence. And a growing sense that I wasn't entirely alone. I reopened the laptop and began to organize my files. Screenshots of texts, email threads with the mortgage company, a copy of the quitclaim deed annotated by Harper's office, the cease and desist letter drafted but not yet sent. I even had photos of the empty house, the trash bins Mrs. Berman salvaged my memories from, and the original mailer with the listing flyer addressed to Linda, not me. I started building folders, each labeled with cold legal precision: title documentation, digital communications, asset displacement, manipulation evidence. This wasn't just about keeping records, it was about reclaiming control. That's when my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. The message was simple: "Vanessa Cruz here. We went to high school together. I think I have information you'll want. It's about Zach." I froze. Vanessa Cruz. Cheer captain Zach's ex-girlfriend and, if memory served, the first person Linda ever publicly referred to as not the right fit for our family. I hadn't thought about her in years. I texted back, "What kind of information?" Her reply came within seconds, the kind that makes courtroom drama look like kindergarten. I called her. My hands were trembling as I held the phone to my ear, trying not to hope too hard. "Hey, Nora. Sorry for the cold intro," Vanessa said, her voice lower and more composed than I remembered. "I wasn't sure if you'd even talk to me. Why now? I've been watching everything from the sidelines. Linda's posts, Zach's, edits to history. I didn't want to get involved. But then I saw what they're doing to you. And I remembered what they did to me." "What did they do?" "I'll send you the files," she said. "Screenshots. Bank activity. Stuff I didn't think mattered at the time, but now." She hesitated. "Now it paints a different picture. You're not just dealing with a toxic family, you're dealing with someone who knew what he was doing. Your brother. He's not just passive in this." There was a long pause. "You think he was in on it from the beginning?" I asked. "I know he was." The call ended, and within minutes my inbox lit up with a zip folder titled, "Things You Should Know About Your Brother." I clicked on it, heart pounding, and watched as the files began to unzip. The war had gone digital, but now I wasn't just defending myself. I was fighting back. If you want to know someone's limits, ask the one who left them behind. Vanessa Cruz was already seated when I arrived at the cafe corner booth, back straight, coffee untouched. Her eyes flicked toward me the moment I walked through the door. She didn't smile, but her gaze wasn't hostile. It was something sharper weighted, as if she'd already rehearsed this conversation 100 times in her head. The cafe was quiet, the kind of place people came to study or break up. Outside, the clouds hung low over Kirkland's skyline, threatening rain but never quite delivering. I slid into the booth opposite her. "I wasn't sure you'd show," she said. "I wasn't sure either," I admitted. She reached into her leather tote and pulled out a flash drive, setting it gently on the table between us. It looked harmless. In another context, it could have held vacation photos or PowerPoint slides. But here, in this conversation, it might as well have been a detonator. "You brought evidence?" I asked. "I brought everything." She pushed the drive closer. "He used my name, Nora. He opened a joint bank account with forged documents, claimed we were common-law married. I only found out when a collections letter came for an apartment I never lived in." My throat went dry. "How is that even possible?" "He's charming," she said bitterly, "and reckless. And he knows exactly how far people will bend if you give them the right story." The apartment was in Bellevue. He told the landlord we were living together while we figured out our future. He used my name on the lease, but the payments came from some shell account under his dad's business. I looked at the flash drive again. What's on there? Screenshots, texts, email threads, even a voice memo he left me when he was drunk, bragging about how he got one over on you. She met my eyes. "I kept it because it pissed me off. But now I think you'll find it useful." I picked it up, still unsure what to say. 1,000 thoughts tangled in my brain, each louder than the last. What else has he done? How deep does this go? What if no one believes me? Vanessa seemed to sense the spiral. "He told me you'd never question him," she said softly, "because you needed to believe in family." The words hit like a punch. I leaned back in my chair, the impact settling in my ribs. It wasn't just that Zach had used her. It wasn't even just that he'd stolen. It was the way he'd calculated our loyalty, mine specifically, as something he could weaponize. He was right. I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I defended him when no one else would. I paid off their debt. I gave up my health insurance, my weekends, my credit, because I thought we were in this together. Vanessa looked down at her coffee, finally taking a sip. Her hands were steady now. "You weren't the only one he fooled," she said. "I loved him too. I thought maybe we'd get married. Until the lies started catching up. My credit tanked. I lost my apartment. My job put me on probation because of fraud investigations tied to the address he gave them. I almost filed a restraining order. Then I walked. I studied her. For years, she'd been a footnote in our family's gossip. The ex-girlfriend Zach couldn't trust. The one Linda said had boundary issues. And now she was the one holding the receipts. "I'm sorry," I said finally. She shook her head. "Don't be. Just make it count." I slipped the flash drive into my coat pocket. "You said something in your message? About money under another name?" Vanessa nodded, pulling out her phone. "While we were together, Zach used to talk about this offshore thing, some account set up under an alias. Michael T. Ryder. I thought he was just bluffing until I saw a wire transfer confirmation from a fake Gmail. I saved the screenshot." She turned the phone so I could see. The image was grainy but clear enough. Account number partially redacted. $28,000 wired out. The recipient name, Michael T. Ryder. "That's not just shady," I murmured. "That's criminal." She nodded once. "It's fraud. And if you get it into the right hands, it might be leverage." I let that sit for a moment. The waitress came by with a refill pot, but neither of us noticed. We were too busy sorting through the shattered glass of our former lives, each picking up pieces the other had been forced to carry. "I always thought you hated me," I said after a pause. "I didn't," Vanessa said. "I envied you. You had the family, the house, the sense of being chosen." I scoffed. "Turns out none of that was real." "Maybe not," she said, standing. "But this right here." She gestured to the flash drive. "This is." And it's time they learned what happens when you lie to someone who finally has nothing left to lose. She left without another word. I stayed in that booth for a long time, listening to the hum of the espresso machine, the clatter of cups, the whispers of lives moving on. Outside, the clouds finally broke, and the first raindrops tapped against the window pane like fingers insisting I get up. I would, but not before backing up every single file Vanessa had given me. The war had officially gone underground, and now I had proof of the lies they thought I'd never uncover. I thought lawyers were about rules. Turns out mine also played chess. Harper Quinn's law office was quiet, unnervingly so. The kind of silence that felt like it had been curated on purpose. Thick carpets, sound-dampened walls, and the persistent click-click of a mechanical keyboard somewhere down the hallway. I sat across from her desk, still clutching the flash drive Vanessa had given me like it might vanish if I let it go. Harper leaned back in her chair, eyes scanning the screen in front of her. Her reading glasses sat low on her nose, but she didn't fidget or adjust them. Every movement she made was deliberate, almost surgical. "You said this was damning," I reminded her. "I want to know if it's usable." She didn't respond right away. Instead, she clicked through several windows before finally removing her glasses and folding them neatly onto the desk. "It's more than damning," she said. "It's strategic gold." I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "This account under Michael T. Ryder," she gestured toward the screen. "If we can tie that alias to Zach and prove it's connected to any part of the property transaction, we can establish financial fraud. That alone justifies halting the sale. But combined with the power of attorney misuse and the quitclaim trail, we're locking the board." She stood moved to a whiteboard behind her desk and began sketching out a diagram. Names, dates, arrows. "At this point, your best defense is a two-pronged offense," Harper continued. "First, we file a lis pendens, that's a formal notice that the property is subject to ongoing litigation. It doesn't stop the sale outright, but it makes any buyer extremely hesitant. No one wants to inherit a lawsuit." She drew a red X through 4117 Oakwood Lane. "Second," she said, "we file an affidavit stating that the quitclaim deed was knowingly misused, that coercion and fraud were involved in an attempt to sell property without full legal authority. We have your documentation, and now, thanks to Vanessa, we also have character evidence." I watched her work, impressed and slightly intimidated. This wasn't someone reacting emotionally. This was someone preparing for war. "What do you need from me?" I asked. Harper turned dry erase marker still in hand. "I need you to decide what kind of victory you want." I blinked. "Is there more than one?" "Oh yes," she said. "You can win in court and still lose in the court of public opinion." Linda is already spinning her narrative. "She's got the emotional advantage, mother-wife caretaker. You're the one filing lawsuits. It won't matter if you're right. They'll paint you as cold, vindictive. The woman who took her family to court over a house. That house is my life." "I know," she said. "But to them, it's just a symbol. And symbols are easier to twist." We stood in silence for a moment. Then she added almost softly, "They won't see a daughter fighting for justice. They'll see a woman destroying her own family. You have to be okay with that." I looked down at the table, hands clenched. I wasn't okay with it. Not yet. But I would be. Later that night, back at home, I cleared the kitchen table and spread out everything Harper had given me. Legal forms, draft affidavits, case law, Vanessa's evidence now printed and filed in chronological order. My phone was off the door locked, the curtains drawn. For the next several hours, I immersed myself in it, reading, annotating, highlighting, understanding not just what was being done in my name, but what I was choosing to do. This wasn't about vengeance. It was about truth. And it was about protecting the future I'd been gaslit into believing I didn't deserve. Sometime after midnight, I made tea and stood by the window watching the glow of other people's homes. Families laughing, lights flickering across TV screens, 100 small, quiet lives continuing on. Mine had become a battlefield, and every paper on the table behind me was a piece of armor. I was about to shut everything down when my phone buzzed, still off, but it had powered back on at some point. Notifications poured in, texts from Rachel, a news alert about a housing fraud case in Seattle, and one anonymous DM request from an account with no profile photo. The message was short. They're prepping to countersue. You have 3 weeks. No name, no emoji, no threat, just a statement. A cold, efficient move in a game I was only beginning to understand. I stared at the screen until the battery blinked red and died again. 3 weeks. Check. No one notices the person copying files until they see the folder marked confidential. The old family desktop still sat in the back bedroom, humming like a dying engine, its beige tower case dusty and warm under the desk. It used to be the computer we all shared before everyone had their own devices, before the Wi-Fi password changed weekly like a secret code only the chosen were allowed to remember. Now it was mine again, or at least what was left of it. Rain tapped the windows like restless fingers, the sound barely covering the low rumble of a storm rolling in. I'd turned off the lights. The glow from the screen painted everything in shades of blue and shadow. On the desk sat an empty mug, my 5th cup of tea that night, and a pad of paper where I'd scribbled every name and login I could remember from the last few years. The plan was simple: go unnoticed. Zach always thought he was smarter than everyone. His emails were rarely deleted. His cloud folders, even if private, were often linked across multiple platforms without him realizing. And the family desktop. He used to sync files here when we were all still pretending we lived under one happy roof. I clicked through folders labeled House Stuff Finances, Archive, and the oddly named HAM-Z Backup 2019. Most were benign scan tax returns, home improvement receipts, even a low-res photo of Zach holding a hammer for a project I had actually funded. I nearly gave up when I spotted a subfolder tucked away near the bottom of a cloud sync menu, Personal Do Not Share. Of course, that was exactly where I clicked. Inside the folder loaded slowly 20, maybe 30 files, most of them PDFs. A few were named vaguely Form B09, Statement, Final 2, Agreement J-Loan. I paused. J-Loan. My heart knocked against my ribs as I opened it. It was a loan contract, $35,000, co-signed by 2 names. One of them was Zachary Thomas Mitchell, the other was mine. My full legal name in bold. No middle initial errors, no misspellings. The signature field held a signature that looked close to mine, but I hadn't signed it. I stared at it for a long moment, willing the lines to rearrange themselves to explain how this could be anything other than what it was, a lie with my name on it. The contract was time-stamped from 2 years ago. Around the time Linda had called about a temporary emergency, begging me to transfer money to help Zach stabilize. She said it wasn't a big deal, just family helping family. There was more. I opened a screenshot image labeled ZTL-AOMSG1. It was a photo of a text message conversation between Zach and Linda. Zach, she's nosing around again. If she finds out, we'll say it was a mistake, that we thought she already agreed. Linda, keep it vague. She'll want to believe us. That was it. No emojis, no flourishes. Just cold strategy. Like they were planning how to stage a fire they didn't expect to spread. The document was still open on my screen, casting pale light across the room. The storm outside cracked lightning flashing behind the curtain for just a second before thunder rolled through like a freight train. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just leaned forward and hit print. Each page that slid out of the printer made the evidence real, tangible, undeniable. I gathered the stack in both hands, checked it twice, then scanned it into my phone. I composed a single email to Harper attaching everything, no subject line, no lengthy explanation. Just a message in the body. It's time. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I left the computer running, the document still open on screen like a silent courtroom waiting for a judge. I sat on the floor beside the desk, knees pulled to my chest, listening to the rain. They thought I'd forget. They thought I'd forgive. They thought I'd never look behind the curtain. But I had the receipts now. And the storm wasn't just outside anymore. They taught me not to air dirty laundry. So they hung mine out for everyone to see first. It started with a news segment during my lunch break. The local station had just wrapped up a weather report when the anchor shifted tone and posture, hands clasped, voice solemn. In a growing civil dispute making waves across Kirkland, she began, a woman is being accused by her own family of financial coercion, misappropriation, and emotional abuse. I froze mid-bite. The sandwich in my hand suddenly felt like it weighed 10 pounds. On the screen was Linda, filmed on her front porch in Texas, wearing a pastel cardigan and holding a handkerchief with just the right level of wrinkle. Her eyes glistened with practiced vulnerability. "We never wanted it to come to this," she said, voice trembling. "We just wanted peace. But Nora, my daughter, she's always had control issues. She changed after Dad passed. She became difficult." Then Zach appeared, seated beside her in a crisp polo shirt, his hand on her knee like the supportive son. "We're not doing this for money. We're doing this because we can't let toxic behavior go unchecked anymore." A Chiron ran across the bottom of the screen, family at war, daughter faces countersuit from parent's brother. I reached for the remote in the break room, turned off the TV. My hands shook, not from fear but rage, cool, clear, and absolute. They were rewriting history again, and people were believing them. As I turned back toward the staff fridge to hide my expression, I caught two of my coworkers whispering in the corner. They weren't subtle. One of them looked away guiltily when I met her eyes. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Instead, I grabbed my coat and walked outside. My phone buzzed. Reddit threads, Facebook group notifications, emails titled, "Are you okay?" or worse. I saw the news, what's really going on. By the time I reached the bench at the far end of the parking lot, I felt like every molecule of oxygen had been replaced with surveillance. They were winning. Again. But I wasn't alone. Lucia found me there quietly, like she'd been waiting for the right moment. We hadn't spoken much outside of work greetings. She was younger, smart, always poised, and had that rare ability to sit with silence without making it feel awkward. She held out a coffee. "Didn't know if you were more of a latte or black kind of person, so I went with bold, but safe." I took it surprised. "Thanks." She sat beside me without asking. "I read the court filings," she said after a pause. "All of them. The actual filings. Not just the headlines." I turned toward her. "Why?" "Because I've been the scapegoat in my family too." Her voice was steady. "And because you don't look like a villain to me. You look like someone who's tired of playing the role they wrote for you." Something in my chest cracked open. We sat in silence again, this time with a shared understanding. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. She didn't need proof. She had already read it. Later that night, I opened Reddit. There were hundreds of comments. She faked power of attorney and now she wants sympathy. Y'all ever notice how estranged daughters always have the same story? It's never their fault, right? Why would her entire family leave if she wasn't the problem? But buried between the judgment and clickbait sarcasm was a message request from Rachel. Rachel K. "There's a loophole in their claim. Want to flip it?" I stared at the screen. Yes, yes, I did. And I was going to hang every piece of their laundry on the courthouse steps pressed highlighted and admissible. When you read every line, you find the ones they hoped you'd skip. Rachel's apartment smelled like cinnamon tea and exhaustion. Papers were spread across her dining table like the aftermath of a legal hurricane: bank statements, court filings, scanned letters, printed screenshots, some documents highlighted into neon rainbows. A half-eaten bag of pretzels sat between us, and my laptop hummed with tabs still open from hours earlier. It was nearly midnight. I keep coming back to this one, Rachel murmured, flipping over a faded envelope and pulling out a photocopy. This isn't a court document, but the language here feels binding. I leaned in. It was a letter, dated just over a year ago. The letterhead had the logo from the financial advisor Zach briefly worked with before he burned that bridge too. It was addressed to Nora Mitchell, CCing a mortgage officer, and signed by Zach. My eyes narrowed on a sentence highlighted in green: I, Zachary T. Mitchell, acknowledge that I have no legal claim to the property located at 4217 Oakwood Lane, having willingly ceded all ownership via quitclaim, and I assume full indemnity for any future disputes regarding said title. My breath caught. You've read this before, right? Rachel asked gently. I shook my head. I never saw this. He never mentioned indemnity. Rachel looked up from the page. Her eyes were sharp, the way they always got when she was about to pounce on a legal flaw. This isn't just him giving up the house. This is him taking legal responsibility if anyone challenges your ownership. It's an admission and a waiver. If this checks out, Harper's going to lose her mind. We called Harper. She picked up on the second ring. Her voice, as always, was cool and composed. We put her on speaker, and Rachel walked her through the document, pausing to read the crucial lines aloud. There was silence on the other end of the line for a moment too long. Then Harper said, "That's a kill shot. If we can verify the authenticity of that letter and the timestamp, you'll need to get the original plus a notarized affidavit from the mortgage officer if possible. But if it holds, they've got no legal ground to sue you. None." I felt like I'd been standing at the bottom of a well for months, staring up at a pinpoint of light. Suddenly, someone had thrown down a rope. "Send me everything," Harper added. "I'll prep a counterclaim response." "Rachel, you just saved us weeks." Rachel gave a small, proud smile. I squeezed her hand under the table, words caught somewhere between my chest and throat. We spent the next hour scanning, organizing, triple-checking dates and sources. By the time the folder was zipped and emailed, my fingers trembled, not from fear this time, but from the strange calm of resolve. I picked up the final form, an affidavit I had to sign to accompany the submission. It certified the chain of ownership, my awareness of the quitclaim deed, and now this indemnity letter. I signed it slowly, not with shaking hands, not with doubt. "No more silence," I said aloud, watching the ink dry. Rachel raised her mug in mock toast. "Welcome to the offensive." I didn't smile. I didn't joke. I just nodded. Then my phone buzzed. Vanessa Cruz, voice memo 0 18. I played it already, expecting more legal jargon or quiet encouragement, but what I heard was her voice, shaky but clear. "He's lawyering up out of state. Zach's scared. They're scared. And that means you're close." I closed my eyes and exhaled. The storm wasn't approaching anymore. It was here. And for the first time, I wasn't the one trying to survive it. I was steering it. They wanted peace, but only if it came with silence and surrender. The mediation center in Bellevue looked like a place where arguments went to die quietly. It had no windows, no warmth, just beige walls, a ticking clock, and a faint smell of old carpet cleaner. It wasn't a courtroom, but it felt worse in some ways. There was no gallery here, no public eye. Just 4 stiff chairs across from 4 stiffer chairs and a long table in between, a battlefield disguised as furniture. Harper sat beside me, her notepad neatly aligned, face unreadable. Across from us sat the people who used to call me family. Linda wore soft blue like she was attending a baby shower, not a legal reckoning. Thomas sat beside her, eyes darting between the mediator and the floor, avoiding mine entirely. And Zach? Zach smiled like this was a networking event. He tapped his pen twice before leaning back, legs crossed, oozing entitlement. The mediator introduced herself in a calm, almost soothing voice. "We're here to explore resolution. Please speak respectfully and give each other the space to be heard." I almost laughed. The irony was suffocating. Linda leaned forward first. "We're not here to fight. Truly. We just believe there's been a misunderstanding." "A legally binding misunderstanding," Harper interrupted, arching an eyebrow. Zach raised his hand in mock innocence. "Look, if Nora felt coerced into anything we didn't know. We thought she signed willingly. We all had a shared understanding." Harper remained still. "Let's be clear, you mean the quitclaim deed. The same one that transferred full ownership to Nora with no compensation." Zach didn't flinch. "Families do things out of love." I spoke then, my voice low, steady. "You're right. I did that out of love. And what did you do with that love? You sold it. You tried to erase me from a home I saved." Thomas opened his mouth, then shut it. "Good." Harper slid a small folder across the table. "This includes signed affidavits from Vanessa Cruz, detailing financial fraud, screenshots of Zach using her identity for a loan, and digital records of misappropriated funds. We've also included a notarized letter of indemnity signed by Mr. Zachary Mitchell acknowledging Nora's sole ownership of the home." Zach's smirk faltered. Linda's fingers clenched the edge of the table. "And one more thing," I said, pulling out a printed screenshot. Harper nodded silently, giving me the floor. I unfolded it slowly, deliberately. My hands didn't shake. I looked directly at Zach, then Linda. "This message was sent from Zach's phone to Linda a week before you all left." I read it aloud. "Once she signs, it's all ours. She's too sentimental to fight back." The room went still. No shuffling papers, no fake coughs. Just silence, thick and undeniable. Zach's face paled. Linda blinked rapidly like she was trying to erase what she'd just heard. Thomas stared at the table as if the grain of the wood could swallow him whole. The mediator cleared her throat and looked between them, then back to us. Her professional tone cracked just slightly. "Given the documentation, the message history, and the witness affidavits, you may want to consider dropping your claim," she said, pausing, "or preparing for court." Harper didn't move. She didn't smile. She simply nodded once and began gathering our files. I didn't look at any of them again. I didn't need to. They had spent months controlling the story, redefining truth, twisting loyalty into liability. But here, in this cold, windowless room, facts had shattered their narrative. I wasn't asking for peace anymore. I was demanding it on my terms. They taught me to never raise my voice. Now I let my silence do the cutting. The hospital break room was unusually quiet for a Thursday. The coffee pot dripped in the corner, the microwave hummed, and the vending machine clicked with mechanical disinterest. I sat at the small table in the farthest corner, sipping stale coffee, pretending to scroll through my phone. Pretending I didn't notice the sideways glances or the sudden hush that followed when I entered. But something had shifted. The tension wasn't derision anymore. It was curiosity. Maybe even respect. Rachel leaned against the wall near the locker's, arms folded, watching a group of nurses whisper by the sink. "They know," she said finally, her voice low. "It's all over the local Reddit threads." The clip from mediation leaked. I didn't respond. Not right away. Instead, I took another sip of lukewarm coffee and thought about how silence had once been my shield. Now it was my blade. Lucia entered, setting her lunch down carefully before sliding into the chair beside me. Her presence was quiet, unobtrusive, exactly how I used to be. "I saw the news segment," she said, glancing sideways. "I'm sorry. I didn't know what you were carrying. I smiled faintly. Most people don't. That's why they underestimate you. We both looked at the muted TV above the vending machines. A local anchor spoke with feigned empathy as Zach's LinkedIn profile photo appeared on screen. Zachary Mitchell, once a rising financial consultant, has been released from his position, pending investigation into alleged identity theft and property fraud. The footage cut to a blurred image of Linda stepping into her real estate office, trailed by reporters. The headline scrolled beneath mother-son duo under scrutiny, family feud or calculated deception. Lucia glanced away. They're unraveling. They were never whole to begin with, I said, standing slowly. Later that day, I met Rachel at a small cafe near the courthouse. She slid a folder across the table without preamble. I didn't need to open it, I already knew what it would say. The state board suspended Linda's license this morning, she said, pending the outcome of the fraud claims. That means no sales, no commissions, no new listings. And Zach Rachel gave a one-shouldered shrug. HR won't comment, but he's been scrubbed from the company's website. Pretty sure he didn't see that coming. I leaned back in my chair and let the weight of it settle. Not just the vindication, but the responsibility that came with it. They built their lives on lies. Nora Rachel said, her tone gentler now. You just flipped on the lights. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. Somewhere deep inside me, I just felt still. That evening, back at the hospital, I found Lucia waiting near my locker, a large envelope in her hands. Her expression was unreadable. This came to my desk, she said. No return address. But it's about your grandmother's will. I froze. My grandmother's will. Lucia nodded, holding it out like it was something sacred or dangerous. I didn't open it. But I think you need to. She stepped back, leaving me alone with the envelope and a storm brewing inside my chest. I traced the edge of the flap with my thumb, my heart pounding. Because if the lies started long before this house, maybe they didn't begin with Zach or Linda. Maybe the silence had roots deeper than I thought. And now, it was time to dig. I thought I'd lost everything. Turns out I never knew what I had to begin with. The envelope sat on my desk like it had its own heartbeat. Faintly worn at the corners, it bore no return address, no handwriting I recognized, just my name in neat typed letters. The air around it felt heavy, like even the walls were waiting for me to open it. I hesitated. Not because I feared what was inside, but because I already sensed what it meant. Another secret. Another truth buried under years of family silence. My silence. Lucia stood quietly by the door, watching me without pressing. She understood the weight of this without needing to say a word. Maybe because she'd seen it before, how families carve wounds with smiles and pleasantries, then hand you the knife, so you'll keep quiet. I opened the envelope with deliberate care. Inside was a letter yellowed slightly with age and a folded set of legal documents. My hands trembled, not with fear but recognition. My grandmother Evelyn's handwriting was unmistakable, elegant, and slightly slanted, each word etched like it had been thought through 100 times. Nora, if you are reading this, something has gone terribly wrong. I sat down. The letter told a story I hadn't known I was part of. Evelyn had drawn up a revised will after I moved back from college, leaving the house, her house, the one with the climbing roses and creaky shutters, to me alone. She said she saw the others chasing ambition and appearances, while I stayed quiet and steady. While I listened. But she was already ill, and by the time she passed, Linda had taken control of the estate. I remembered the funeral, the hollow eulogies, the rushed signatures, the way no one looked me in the eye when I asked about the will. Harper's voice came through clearly on speakerphone as I read the documents aloud to her. This is significant. This isn't just sentiment, Nora. This is the original deed, dated, notarized, and witnessed. You were always the legal heir. I swallowed hard. Then how did They forged the amendment, Harper said bluntly. They claimed Evelyn changed it again. But that second version, sloppy, wrong formatting, no witness signatures, it wouldn't hold in court for 10 seconds. I set the paper down and leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Everything I'd sacrificed, my credit, my peace years of financial stability, it wasn't just exploited, it was unnecessary. I'd always had the right to this home. They took it anyway, and I let them. Because I wanted to keep the family together. Because I believed them when they said we were stronger united. Because I thought if I kept the peace, I'd be valued. But my silence didn't make me safe. It made me invisible. The memory hit me like a wave. Evelyn in the garden sun hat askew, holding a sprig of lavender under my nose. You have the gift, she had said. The one that listens sees waits. But don't let them confuse your stillness for weakness. At the time, I didn't understand what she meant. I do now. Lucia finally stepped forward, her voice gentle. This changes everything, doesn't it? No, I said. It clarifies everything. The betrayal was deeper than I knew, but so was my right. This wasn't just a house. It was a line drawn between two versions of me, the daughter who waited for their approval, and the woman who no longer needed it. I stood and walked toward the kitchen, the document still in my hand, as if movement would help my body catch up with the shift in my mind. The hardwood floor creaked beneath my steps. Every sound felt like punctuation. Final. Certain. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, indifferent to how my world had just reordered itself. When I returned, Lucia was still waiting. She looked at me not like someone looking for instruction, but like someone who already knew the answer. The final hearing is next week, she said. Are you ready to end this? I didn't hesitate. Yes. Justice wasn't loud, it was steady. Like a shovel in the dirt, one strike at a time. I pressed my foot into the spade, letting it sink through the damp early autumn soil. The wind moved through the backyard like it was exhaling the last of summer, scattering brittle leaves across the uneven lawn. My sweater clung to me with morning chill, and each breath carried a blend of lavender, wet earth, and memory. The garden hadn't been touched in years. Weeds choked the borders, the birdbath was cracked in half, and the lattice that once held climbing roses had rotted to the point of collapse. But this was mine now. Every broken piece was mine to rebuild or leave exactly as it was. I knelt down, tugged at a tangled vine near the old swing set, and there it was, half buried in dirt and rust, a plastic toy horse. One leg snapped, its eyes still wide with the same cartoon courage I used to hold it with. I cradled it gently, brushing off the soil as if I were cleaning off something sacred. It wasn't just a toy, it was proof that I had been here, that I mattered. The screen door creaked behind me, and Lucia's voice followed, bright and unsure. You always dig this early in the morning, I turned to smile. Only when I'm pulling out ghosts. She stepped into the yard, a thermos in one hand, a binder under her arm. Coffee. And practice questions. I figured you'd be up. I gestured for her to sit on the porch swing. How's prep going? Lucia groaned. Nursing boards are a special kind of torture. You'll pass. I said it simply, like fact. Because it was. She didn't just want a new life, she was building it brick by brick. I recognized that energy, the same quiet refusal to stay broken. After a while, we moved inside. My kitchen still felt oddly hollow, furniture returned, but echoes remained. But something had changed. The air wasn't stale with what they took from me. It was alive with what I had chosen to keep. That afternoon, I stood before a group of 5 women in the community center's rec room. Each wore the kind of smile people give when they're trying not to cry, tight-lipped, brave, and tired. I knew that expression too well. The sign on the board behind me read, "Burnout Support Rebuilding After Collapse." I told them I wasn't a therapist, that I wasn't a motivational speaker or a success story, but I could tell them what it looked like when your family called you selfish for saving yourself. I could tell them what it felt like to be erased, and how it feels now clawing your way back one breath, one file, one truth at a time. Mrs. Berman came up after the session ended. She brought a small paper bag with her inside a stack of handwritten recipes I thought had disappeared with my mother. "Found these in a drawer," she said softly. "Thought you should have them." I wasn't sure whether to cry or laugh, so I just hugged her. Her arms were warm and real, the way a person becomes part of your healing simply by witnessing it. That evening, I returned to the backyard. The garden was still chaos, but now it was intentional chaos. I could already see where the soil would give in spring, where I'd plant rosemary and maybe rebuild the rose trellis. I stood in the middle of the yard, the sky overhead soft with layered cloud streaks of lavender and gold sliding across the horizon like slow forgiveness. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was standing on my property. I felt like I was standing in my story. I didn't need applause or apologies. Just this, this land, this air, these scars, this stillness. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I wiped my hands on my jeans and glanced at the screen. Rachel. Her message was simple, but it carried the weight of everything we'd fought for. Court ruling in 2 hours. Want me to come with you? They never apologized. But that's okay. I didn't rebuild my life for their approval. The courthouse smelled of old paper and lemon disinfectant, a sterile kind of finality that suited the day. My boots echoed quietly against the polished marble as I walked past families waiting for custody hearings, lawyers muttering to clients, a bailiff sipping burnt coffee. Room 3B was nearly empty. Only Harper Rachel, the opposing counsel, and a clerk were present. No Zach. No Linda. No surprise. They'd stopped showing up weeks ago after the press got wind of the forged documents, and Vanessa's testimony circulated on legal forums like wildfire. Their lawyer had tried to downplay it as miscommunication between family members. The judge hadn't smiled once. I sat beside Harper, spine straight. My fingers didn't tremble anymore. Judge Carson reviewed the final stack of papers, glasses perched low on her nose, then looked over them one last time before placing her pen gently atop the file. Her voice was calm, clipped. The court affirms that the property located at 42117 Oakwood Lane is solely and legally owned by Ms. Nora Mitchell. All counterclaims filed by the Mitchell family are dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, the court awards damages in the amount of I didn't even register the number. It didn't matter. Money never did. Not really. The silence that followed was absolute. For a moment, it felt like the air had been vacuumed out of the room. Then the judge stood, and it was done. Just like that. Harper leaned toward me, voice low. "You didn't just win. You closed them. Clean." I nodded once, but the weight didn't lift. Not yet. The lawyer representing Zach and Linda gave me a nod as if to say nothing personal and packed up quietly. There was no eye contact, no lingering glance. They knew what this meant. Outside the courthouse, the wind tugged gently at my coat. It was mid-afternoon, but the sun was soft, filtered through thin autumn clouds. A few reporters stood near the steps. One woman in a red coat holding a notepad called out, "Ms. Mitchell, do you have anything to say to your family?" I paused halfway down the stone steps. 1,000 responses flickered through my head, witty, cutting, righteous. But instead, I let the silence bloom around me. I turned toward her, met her gaze evenly, and answered no. "I've already said everything I needed to in court." Rachel exhaled like she'd been holding her breath the entire morning. That she muttered should be framed. We made it to the car without another word. On the way home, we didn't talk about the ruling. We talked about where to order soup dumplings from, and whether or not my backyard would get enough sun next spring for tomatoes. Healing, I was learning, didn't come with fireworks. It came with ordinary things returned to you. That evening, the house was warm with the scent of garlic and toasted sesame. Lucia stood at the kitchen island carefully setting out mismatched plates and cloth napkins humming off-key to an old 90s R&B playlist. The light over the dining table flickered once, then settled into a golden glow. She looked up when I stepped in. "Hey, Nora, come eat." "You've been quiet today." I looked around the space, my space. The journal on the table sat open to a blank page. For the first time in months, I didn't feel the need to write it all down. I smiled, took the seat across from her, and closed the notebook with one gentle motion. Not anymore. Every single view means a meal for someone in need. Just by watching this video, you're giving warmth, hope, and a full plate to those less fortunate. So watch now, share now, subscribe to the channel, and let's spread love together.